Is the chief editor, proprietor, and publisher, chief cook and bottle washer of all things Equity.Guru. Chris, welcome back.
How's it going?
It's going fantastically. We have been observing from across the country, like from our various positions across the country, the unfolding of the cannabis market. You and I have both, we've been in some deals together. We have been on opposite sides of the opinion ladder.
Oh boy, have we.
A couple of things. Yet we remain friends. Why is that?
Because you wear the Parker Lewis Can't Lose shirts, and I appreciate that about you.
I see. Well, I'm going to have to send you my tailor then, aren't I? No, so you were down at the Cantech Conference.
It's okay to disagree with each other because our opinions are based on due diligence, and that doesn't have to be black or white.
Well, yours aren't. Mine are just based on who's paying me. No, just kidding. That's a joke I've been wanting to make for years. You just came from the Cantech Conference. Yep. What did you see down there that you liked?
Man. So the buzzword is esports. Everyone's looking for where they can put their money in esports. And I guess the title of my keynote was, don't make the same mistakes you made in blockchain in esports, you rubes.
You rubes. Well, in case anybody's wondering who that refers to, that's you.
Let's just not be effing idiots about things, right? Like we were last year.
Right.
Look, the cannabis industry had this moment in 2014 where everyone was high on cannabis, no pun intended, but didn't really know what they were going to do with it all. And eventually there was an industry. Blockchain, same thing. Eventually there's an industry. Lithium and cobalt had their moments. They've gone away now, but eventually there'll be an industry. And esports is going to be the same thing. There'll be lots of money made on lots of really shitty deals that have no real business attached to them. And then there'll be lots of money lost. And in amongst that, there'll be some real companies that will actually extend out the
Sure.
inside.
I plan to lose some money in esports.
I'm going to lose a lot of money in esports. I've actually already lost a lot of money in esports. My kids spent $6,000 on my credit card on in-game purchases, individually one another.
Without telling you?
At the same time.
Oh, wow.
$1,500 by my daughter, $4,500 by my...
Jeez, you really got to keep better your credit cards, eh?
They're doing 600 hours of community service in the backyard as a result.
Yeah, the community service.
When you lose that much money on something, the first thought is, I'm going to kill them. The second thought is, how do I get on the other end of that?
Sure. The esports thing is interesting to me because I had a young fellow start to DM me on Twitter about
we don't want to talk about that, James.
Well, this is interesting. No, that didn't go anywhere. However, he had this idea. He was trying to get me to fund his esports team. And at that point, I said, well, what is esports? Right. I had not heard of it at that point. And he explains to me that he has got a bunch of young guys who are proficient competitors at various video games, and that some of the video game producers had started to put up big purses, and he had created a business where he was basically putting these teams together, giving them a living wage, which for a 14 to 17-year-old kid is almost a nirvana from heaven. Yeah. And manna from heaven. Somebody pointed out that I was mixing that metaphor. Anyways, and I said, so great, that sounds great. What size purses are you winning? He said, well, the biggest one coming up this year is going to be $55,000. And I'm like, you know, that's not really the essence of a public company. Yeah. So then I had a conversation actually on the weekend down in the southern United States with a gentleman who's probably one of the more prolific promoters in the street, and he told me about a deal where he was going to partner up with one of the major franchises in professional motorsports, and he laid out a sort of a business model that made perfect sense and sounded like it could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Just like blockchain.
Well, just like blockchain, I never bought into because blockchain to me, the fallacy was...
But you missed out on so much money on the way up.
I did, but you know, my objective is always to buy low and sell a little lower. So blockchain just didn't meet that because the stocks were all going too high.
Right.
But the esports thing, you know, show me a business model that I can wrap my head around that doesn't base itself on the idea that if you can program something and explain it to me in such a complicated way that I have zero hope of understanding it, and that's worth billions of dollars, I'm out. Right. But if you can explain it to me in a way that makes total sense and actually, you know, something that a simpleton like I can wrap my head around, then I'm in. So I'm on the fence about esports, and I want to ask you, is there any esports company that you can talk to that's publicly traded that looks like a winner?
There's a couple. Of the literal dozens that are floating around, there are certain ones that I would not touch. There was one I heard about recently where they were planning to set up a gambling operation on esports, and the last thing I can think of I want to put $100 on is an Eastern European 15-year-old playing Fortnite not throwing a game. That doesn't seem like a lot of sense to me. To me, owning the games themselves is where the money's at. If I own Fortnite, then I get to sell the franchises, and I get to run the tournaments, and I get to put sponsors in the game.
So the way to play esports is to buy the publishers of the game?
Yeah, like if you're running a team and you put a sponsor on someone's sleeve, that's not making you anywhere near as much money as if the sponsor is in the game itself, or if it's running an ad in the middle of the tournament that you don't run. So that's my one problem with the let's build teams for esports model. The second one is you're holding 15-year-olds to contracts. I don't know about you, but any 15-year-old I've ever met, the drama quotient is extremely high. So when you're going into a world championship and suddenly the 15-year-old says, look, I've got exams. Right. I can't come.
Right.
Now you got to go find another 15-year-old. You know, like they have drama, they get toxic with each other, they're in and out.
They do drugs, they shoot each other, they bang each other.
Right. It's all terrible business.
All these horrible things like, those rotten kids do that we never did.
It's like House Street all over again.
Right. So we do that now when we're adults.
I don't want to be holding 15-year-olds to contracts and expecting them to behave like 25-year-old professional athletes.
Sure.
The other side of it is we're going to run tournaments. It's going to be great. We're going to have tournaments all over. There's 100 tournaments out there and 100 games out there. And the only ones that really have the massive audience and prize money are Dota 2, which fills stadiums, and League of Legends, which fills stadiums. As you get down the levels there's a whole lot of games that have an audience and people will watch. But there's no real great, like, we must have. It's like if someone said to you, I'm starting an arena football team. You'd be like, why?
Yeah.
If you win the whole thing, maybe you win 50 grand, and that's where we are with esports.
Right, right. Well, so I just say to people, how many professional sports franchises are publicly traded?
Right.
and there's your answer as to the value proposition for some esports models.
And the vast majority of professional esports teams that are even recognizable are funded by retired NBA players or actors or people who've got a lot of disposable income. I could have put it back to the 1980s when professional wrestling suddenly became a big thing.
Yeah.
And there are 100 money marks out there who are like, I'm going to recreate the WWF. It's going to be great. And they all lost their money because they didn't actually know how to compete with someone who has a broadcast deal and a sales force and owns all the talent. So to me, that whole team structure side of things, there's a couple of companies, Tidal Gaming is one that is dealing in the team side of things, and they actually own some big known teams in well-known games and have a model there that makes some sense because they have the ability to bring in big name sponsors for big money. As you get further down the chain, that rolls right out to zero. To me, hosting the games is the important thing. I've spent a lot of time with my kids playing games, watching games, and server outages are the biggest problem in the entire area. Because we've built this internet that is mostly one way, right? You tell Netflix what movie you want to watch, it sends you the movie. It doesn't require you to send a movie back.
Right.
Video games, if we're going to have the Netflix of video games, you require the game to be going back and forth, and we don't have the structure to do that yet.
Sure.
So there are some companies out there that are starting to plan the next iteration of the internet. On mobile, 5G technology is coming, but it's going to be a battle over 5 years. On the other side, a company that I've been working with for about a year and a half, this is our first company that we've helped go public. There's a company called Amped Gaming Technologies.
Right.
Vashni Capital just raised $4 million for them. They're going public in March. And their whole thing is we're going to build small data centers instead of massive ones. And those data centers, the heat that comes from them, we can put them in the ground floor of a condo development, and the heat will heat the building. And the condensation of the air conditioning units on the servers creates clean drinking water for the building. So the cost of actually maintaining those servers is offset by those things.
Wow.
And you can actually get the data centers to a place where there might be 50 of them in a city, as opposed to one in Iceland. If you're playing a game and you're sending your thing out to Iceland, you're waiting for it to come back, like that's when you have problems in the games.
The infrastructure of esports.
Infrastructure of esports. No one talks about infrastructure anywhere.
Nobody had even ever told me about that.
Who's doing the infrastructure of cannabis? Nobody, that's who.
We're going to leave it there right now. My next guest is here. Chris, it was great to see you again. We're going to have to catch up with you at the end of the day after the show, maybe at the Pravda event tonight.
The last time I went drinking with you, it was not a good scene. So I don't know.
Come on, you became a legend that night.
Yeah, I did, for all the wrong reasons. People still tell me what I did that night. I'm like,
you bet.